Howdy. Welcome to the second week of Risk Assessment and Management for Cybersecurity. By this time, I hope you've taken some time to familiarize yourself with the NIST SP 800 documents. The purpose of this lecture is to walk you through a high-level risk assessment so you can be able to see the overarching plan. So we're going to do a little case study. I want you to have some pen and paper handy, and this is just going to be how we do a walkthrough. And it's a domain you should be familiar with, student records management. How does the university manage your records? So if we were going to conduct a risk analysis, we would go through these steps. We would establish parameters of contracts with the university. That is, you want to have everything in writing. What is the expectation for the risk assessment? What are you going to deliver? What systems are included? You're going to scope it because you can't do a risk assessment on the entire university. You're going to prepare for the pre-assessment visit. And this is what I want to emphasize in this lecture. All good risk assessments are managed as projects. And by that I mean you have goals of your project, you have activities, you have a schedule, you have a budget, right? And you plan. And sometimes your plans don't go off as you thought. However, the discipline of having a plan will help you prepare for things that pop up that you didn't think about. So you never go into a risk assessment cold. You look for source documents, you get smart on the domain, you know you have questions to ask, interview questions. You know that when you talk to people, their time is valuable. If someone says, hey, you can have Joe, he can follow you around for 40 hours, Joe probably isn't a very valuable resource, okay? And our whole goal of this is to determine the organization's information criticality. Go back to what we talked about last week about FIPS 199 and FIPS 200, high, medium, low. And then we're going to determine the system information criticality. So here's the deal. This is something just to walk through, make assumptions. I want you to be thinking. I want you to start putting on a mindset of being a risk analyst. I want you to walk down the street and begin to see all the things that can go wrong. Remember, there's 4 ways we can deal with risk. We can accept it, we can avoid it, we can mitigate it, and we can transfer it. And so in this exercise, don't worry, there's no right or wrong, there's only do. So let's say we're going to have boundaries and assumptions. We're going to have a risk assessment on 3 campuses. I used to give this exercise when I taught at U of H 1 campus, but hey, you guys are Aggies, we can handle 3 campuses. So begin to think, what if you had to do a risk assessment of student management between 3 campuses as opposed to 1 campus? What would the differences be? Well, let's make the assumption that there's a central database for all student records at the flagship university in College Station. Because, as you know, you can enroll in different, either the sister universities or those that are extensions of the flagship campus, Galveston, McAllen. And so somewhere along the line, that data is going to be transmitted. And how's it going to be transmitted? So that's one aspect of it. Other aspect, a question might ask, is if it's 3 campuses, and let's say it's a sister campus, is there some kind of course table or matrix that would say, well, this course, CPSC XXX, is actually equivalent to this course, YYY. Now, I don't know the answers to some of these. I'm just throwing out things I want you to be thinking about. What happens when we make the problem 3 campuses? Another one to be worried about is how the system manages the student data relative to being enrolled in class and working towards a degree. In other words, I'm saying I want students who are currently enrolled, not those applying, those who have been officially terminated, or those who have graduated. Okay? So I want you to think about the system maintaining data, beginning with the system enrolled at the university. We're not going to worry about the application. And it ends with a student graduating or officially terminating, either dropping out or unfortunately flunking out. So here's why I want this example. What does the university maintain on you? So let's think about some student data. Well, obviously, your name, your address, your social security number. Does it keep your height, your weight, your eye color? Is that data necessary? One of the overarching concepts in any risk assessment or in any cybersecurity is that keep only the data that you need. Now, it may make sense for some databases to keep height, weight, eye color, and the like, but probably for the student data, I would say no. Then it's going to keep what classes you're enrolled in, and by what semester and what class. It's going to keep some kind of plan of study, your major, your degree plan, your finished courses, your planned courses, those that you're in this semester. It's going to keep your grade history. It's going to keep student loan information. I don't have it listed here, but it's going to keep student medical information. Now let's go back. Name and address. How critical is that data to be protected? Well, pretty much that's public data. So let's say that's low. You add to it your social security number and it is high. Keep this in mind. Anytime you have accumulated data that has just one data item that is highly critical, then that entire grouping becomes highly critical. So once I add name, no, address, no, social security number, yes. All right. Class enrollment. If the class enrollment, what you're enrolled in this semester, would you say that's high, medium, or low? Let's say for the case of argument, it's medium. Your plan of study, your proposed major, your degree plan, your completed courses, your finished courses, I would say medium. It's private to you, however, there's several people at the university that's going to have access to that information, and if that information were compromised, there's not a long-term consequence or impact, and in fact, that's information you're going to share with prospective employers. So yes, we want to protect it. We don't want to publicly disclose it, so we're not going to give it a low, but it's not the same criticality of a social security number. Your grade history, ding, 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 obviously high criticality. Student loan information, high criticality. Student medical information, high criticality. So here's what I want you to be thinking of. The system has to maintain and report student data. It has to, you can read the list, it has to take care of student accounts and financial aid processing, class and teacher schedules, record examinations, assessments, and the like through that list. So some of these as functions, again, have lower criticality. The class and teacher schedule is available through Howdy. Okay, it's anyone that's in the university can see that. But anytime you have student accounts and financial aid processing or examinations, marks and grades and the like, that's highly critical. So what we do from this is we take our student information and we look at our CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and we plot the information. And this is what I want you to do on just some pen and paper. I want you to work with this. You correlate student information with the impact attributes in the criticality matrix. So, is it confidential? Yes. Is it integrity? Yes. Is it availability? And then you're going to put high, medium, or low. So, according to this criteria, if the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability is going to have a limited adverse effect, okay? If it's going to have a serious effect, or if it's going to have a severe or catastrophic effect, low, moderate, and high. I tend to say low, medium, and high. Sorry, I should say moderate, be more disciplined. However, remember what I said in the first class. I'm not going to say 22.5 or 44.6 or 87.9. I'm going to say qualitatively low, moderate, high. We fit this into these classifications. So in our student record example, go back and think through which students' records would be high, medium, and low. Excuse me, high, moderate, and low. And then look at the functions we talked about. High, moderate, or low. I've even put medium on the slide. All right, same thing. Class and teacher schedules, lower medium, anything with grades, high. Now we have to think about regulatory compliance. Security and compliance are not the same thing. You can have a system that is secure but not compliant, and conversely, you can have a compliant system that's not secure. Now, many people would argue about that, but I believe that you could do, just because you're compliant according to the law of regulations, you can still have insecurity. Some commentators say no. If you do compliance correctly, you will be secure. I say security does not equal compliance. Compliance does not equal security. We'll talk about this in a later lecture, but this is typical of regulatory laws. Gramm-Leach-Bliley, Financial Management Accounting Act, Sarbanes-Oxley, FERPA. I put in red the two that I would highlight as having to be very compliant for student data. HIPAA is medical. Family Education Rights and Privacy Act is just what that said, passed in the 70s to keep your information private. When I was in college, grades were posted on the door by your name or by your social security number. Or when I took my language, which was Russian, by your initials, which were in the Cyrillic alphabet, or your name in the Cyrillic alphabet, which anyone in Russian still knew what your grade was. None of this privacy was in effect. Now, I'm going to switch, I'm going to switch for a minute, and I'm going to go to show you how to do this plan. So if you go to Google or whatever, and you pull up NIST SP 800-30 Revision 1, it's a guide for conducting risk assessments, okay? And it was last updated in September 2012. Now, I think I explained last week that the NIST documents go through a read-review cycle. So sometimes you'll see something like Revision 5 of SP 800-53 is currently in draft, but it's in draft because the review cycle is not finished. There's a handful of these NIST SP 800s you need to know for this class: 53, 30, 37, and 39. Let's look at 30. It's a guide for conducting risk assessments. You go to this center and it shows you the abstract and keyword. Excuse me, my dogs are commenting on my lecture skills. Hey. Shh. And you can go here and you can then click on the document. And it's about, let's see, how many pages is it? Let's go to the table of contents. So you'll look at this guide for risk assessments, and you'll want to go up and somewhere see the table of contents right here. And if you look at Appendix 11, you have a summary of tasks. Your job for this week is to look specifically at SP 800-30. Okay? It's about 40 pages of reading, and then go through the appendices. So let's look for that appendix. And it's your summary of tasks. You prepare for the risk assessment, and it tells you exactly what to do. Identify the purpose, identify the scope, identify the assumptions and constraints, identify the information resources, identify the risk model and analytic approach. It tells you how to do the task, and then if you look here at section 3.1, it will tell you specifically how to do that. Second step, conduct risk assessment. Again, you identify the threat resources. You're going to look at Appendix D, or identify threat events, Appendix E, or identify vulnerabilities, Appendix F. Third step, and I won't go through all of them, but you can see it here. Third step is you're going to communicate and share the risk assessment results. And the fourth step is you're going to maintain the risk assessment. Now, this is your overarching plan for conducting a risk assessment. I had dinner with a former student last night, who was my student at the University of Houston, and we laughed about how in that class I made them do detailed risk assessments and how it was tedious and boring, but it was the only way to learn how to do it. And when he joined Deloitte, and they put him in 3-week training, he said he was far ahead of the other students because, first of all, 3 weeks was not going to teach him how to do the risk assessment. And second of all, because he had learned so much from my class doing those boring, repetitive tasks. So, goal for this week, I want you to read through SP 800-30, and I want you to think through how you would do this with a student assessment, and I want you to communicate with me. Let me go back to our slides. I want you, and I've got here 10 questions to interview in class. You don't have to do 10, but I want you each to communicate with me. I want to create this community. I feel like, you don't see me when I video because right now I'm having trouble with Camtasia. It takes so long to process the video. Although, frankly, today I'm, sitting in my house at my dining room table, and you could have heard my dogs before I gave them some treats. But I want you to give me some questions or some issues. Let's talk about this and let's discuss it. And let's remember the task. Prepare for risk assessment, conduct, communicate, share results, and maintain it. Now, here's the deal, and I tell all my students this. I'm a professor of practice, which means I come from industry. I have done these risk assessments. In fact, I've tried to scrub documents where I can share some with you, but I have done them for industry. I've been paid to do them for industry, and the student's right. It's dull, it's tedious sometimes, it's very detailed work. However, you're going to go into a job and you're going to think, let's say the boss the first week says, hey, can you do a risk assessment? And you panic. Don't ever panic. If they ask you to do a privacy impact assessment, don't panic. If they ask you to do anything with cybersecurity, tell them you can do it. Because guess what? The NIST documentation is there to guide you. That's going to end video 1. I'm going to pick up on video 2. Stay with me.